One Piece chapter 1008 is here, and there's a lot to talk about, but you know, per usual, we're gonna just talk about the major things that's happened, and we're gonna leave the dissection to Sunday, per usual, when the official translations come out. This chapter was an interesting one because I think after my reaction, I was a bit underwhelmed. And after talking to some of my friends, I feel a bit better about the chapter and, you know, maybe subverting some of my expectations, but you know, we'll get into it. But if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. I would greatly appreciate it. Sometimes you come to the channel and you watch several videos and you don't realize you're not subscribed. Please take this opportunity to do so. And without further ado, One Piece chapter 1008. So I mentioned the pattern that Oda was following in last chapter. I said the next chapter should be an alliance member, right? Not a Straw Hat, but an alliance member based on the pattern. And last chapter was Chopper, so this chapter ended up being Ashura Doji. So I like that Oda chose to resolve the Oden storyline immediately. Like, he didn't linger or play around it, because a lot of people were calling it a bit cheap, because most people figured or understood that there was no way it could be Oden, like the actual Oden. There was a possibility, like a slight chance, and most people did acknowledge that, but for the most part it was like, come on, like, we know it's not Oden. And this chapter, it basically resolved that. There were people that were surprised, right? There were people that were shocked, and they almost believed it when he said, well, no, I was transferred forward, or rather transported forward with Toki's powers. I was like, nope, I still don't believe it, because again, there's so many holes there in regards to why he would wait that long. Why does he wait until, you know, scabbards are seriously hurt? There are things there that he would have to fill in. There's too much things to talk about there, and I don't think Oda had enough time. So I was like, no, there's no way, I don't believe that. But Ashura Doji being the voice of reason here makes sense, because in a way, Ashura Doji is portrayed to be someone not as strong as Oden. But remember when Oden went all the way to Korea to fight him, he was the boss over there. So Ashura Doji, you know, he has some seniority. Of course, Kinemon is the leader, but Ashura Doji, he has that air about him, and it makes sense that he's the one to, you know, look past his feelings and say, you know what, guys, this doesn't make sense. And he explained Toki's power about from the past and going to the future and never going back. So like this character of Oden was playing with the scabbard's feelings, that's what Oda was doing with us, and trying to, you know, build up this hope, because there's a part of me, I can't even lie, there's a part of me that was wishing that it was real, that Oden was truly back, because of how much I admired him, and also because of how he died. But there's a part of me that was like, this doesn't make any sense. Oden should remain dead, right? So I was conflicted. And Oda echoed that in this chapter by having most of the scabbards conflicted, saying, you know what, I'm shocked, it's him. Then having somebody being the voice of reason saying, no, that's not him. So it's cool with him saying, you know, I wish he was real. And the person ended up being Kanjuro. And we had a whole video talking about this. And I mentioned that, you know, at that point, that Kanjuro was at the top of my list with Onimaru and, you know, the teapot stuff and all that Katarina. I didn't believe any of that other stuff, right? So it's good that it's Kanjuro. That makes the most sense. Kanjuro's my favorite scabbard, right? I switch scabbards from time to time, but it's been consistent for a while now, ever since we found out Kanjuro was actually really competent and could actually draw. So him, and just how petty he is, where he's on the brink of death. I mean, it goes back to Kiku and not being able to kill him, but Ashura Doji, he explained, you know, that your sword, it becomes blunt when it's pointed at a friend, which is really cool. It is given Ashura Doji a lot more development and shows that he really cares about these people. And it goes back to our introduction to Ashura Doji, right? Where Ashura Doji, where he was someone that questioned the scabbards coming back and the whole prophecy, because he was there and had to live through all that Wano had gone through. So him coming full circle and sacrificing himself, I absolutely loved it. But Kanjuro being Mr. Petty and, you know, surviving and coming back and saying, this is my final performance, doing all that just to troll the scabbards and take them out. I mean, he's a really good villain. I think he's playing his role extremely well. Then of course, Kanjuro being back, I said, you know, with Kanjuro being back, you know, I mentioned this in the last review as well. There was no way I thought Orochi was dead. There was no way in hell, and Orochi is back. And of course, it makes sense that I said there's no way in hell that he's dead, and he comes back and he's in a building that's on fire. How did he survive? That's something that we'll find out more about, but more than likely it's his devil fruit being a mythical Zoan and having several heads. I mean, come on, guys. It was, to me, it was pretty obvious. And, you know, Fukurokuju's behind him. He had disappeared for a while. The only thing was that Hote had disappeared with Fukurokuju, and Fukurokuju, he remained missing. So that told me everything I needed to know, that he was probably with Orochi. Is Ashura Doji dead? No, right? But we had a, you know, a very long discussion about this, about him being dead, but we don't think that's the case, right? What would be amazing is if Ashura Doji is actually dead, and because of what happened in this chapter with Kanjuro and Orochi, we overlook it. And then we realize at the end of the war, oh, Ashura Doji actually died. And that would hit a lot more, right? At this moment, I don't think he's dead, right? We have Jack, he's back, right? We've been seeing him sporadically in the chapters. He's back and he's fighting Inarashi. Now I think Inarashi had one of the best lines of the chapter, if not the best line, when Jack mentioned the full moon, but Inarashi came back with the poison gas. And that goes back to Zou, where they fought. And, you know, Jack was fighting each Duke for 12 hours, just him, but he overcame them and overwhelmed them by using the poisonous gas. Now I said with Inarashi, with that sly and snark remark, I was saying, well, what if Jack pulls out some poisonous gas right now? What do you say then, right? But, you know, it's cool that Inarashi's fighting Jack. I thought Nekomamushi would stay back as well, because now they can fight Jack together, because they didn't fight him back then together because of what happened with Oden, right? Now they could rectify that and basically overcome the past and some of those issues by fighting together now and overcoming Jack, which still could happen. But people are saying Ashura Doji could get back up. He fought Jack previously, and it could be Ashura Doji and Inarashi taking out Jack, which that would be crazy, because Ashura Doji and the Scabbards, they were on the brink of death, right? Got helped by someone, this mysterious person. And so after all that, if he's still good enough to fight against Jack, I mean, come on. Orochi being back, I think it makes sense. Right? It makes sense for him to be back. There are things that has to be resolved. I think his death was too clean. Plot points open in regards to the Scabbards and how they feel about him, how the people of Wano feel about him, and also with the Kurozumi, their history in Wano, where they're hunted down, not because of things they necessarily did, but because of how the people feel about the Kurozumi. That's something with Wano culture and the history they have to rectify and overcome some of these societal just issues, right? Because that's the reason for Wano's demise, because you persecuted the Kurozumi, right? So we have to have something come full circle with that. Momonosuke, I think what's going on with him is the most interesting thing from this chapter to me. He's explaining his power and all that, but I think what's interesting here is that he was able to detail what's going on with Luffy and how he was feeling, how worn out he was from where he was. And of course, Momonosuke, we know he has the voice of all things, right? And he can command Zunisha. He can do things that nobody else that we've seen that even has the voice of all things can do. So now, with his assessment of Luffy and his condition, it just opens my mind to, wait, what can Momonosuke possibly do at this point with that power? Because, guys, that is incredible. Because they're like, wait, how do you know all that? Luffy's on the rooftop. Momonosuke and them, they're below, and he was able to assess all of that. Now, voice of all things, that's the first thing that pops in my head, but then I have to think about Momonosuke's connection with Kaido. Is there a way that he is picking up how Luffy feels and what Luffy is going through because of his connection with Kaido? You know, that's more so of a stretch as opposed to him and just having the voice of all things and being able to pick those things up. So I'm really interested in what happens with Momonosuke going forward. I made a video about him, Momonosuke, and how he could save the people of Wano and kind of mirror or his father in a way, right, by holding up the people of Wano. Fortunately as well, we get the rooftop and basically they're still fighting, but we missed quite a bunch because Luffy is back and Kaido, we see his hybrid form. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys. The hybrid form from Kaido, to me, was a bit underwhelming, but also I went into it having really high expectations because of how some of the hybrid forms in Wano they've been really good, right? I think Ulti is really great. Page 1 is phenomenal. And also X Drake was really good, right? So even Marco, you know, his hybrid form is cool. I had great expectations for Kaido's hybrid form, and then, you know, people making the fan art, and it kind of, you know, changed my expectations. I expected Kaido's hybrid to be just out of this world. It wasn't. It isn't. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. It's not the best we've seen at all. But at this point, it seems like they're not making any progress. They're not hurting anyone. And now Law, the plan is to split them up because seemingly they have stellar teamwork and they can't do anything to either of them. Now, something I want to point out is that Kaido, he seems to be a bit bruised up, but Big Mom, she's completely clean. There's no bruises, no damage, nothing. And she's been fighting this entire time. So I just want you guys to just look at that and understand just how much of a monster Big Mom is, because that's actually crazy, right? But right now they're fighting and they're trying to overcome them. Luffy's still, you know, being as fiery as he normally is. Kaido even complimenting him. Zoro's agreeing with Law that they have to separate them. They're going to give it their all. At this point, they have to, because Kaido's in his hybrid form. And you know what? At this point, I think I'm more excited for what the hybrid form can do as opposed to how it looks. So, you know, we got to wait and see exactly, because Oda didn't show us all of it. And, you know, for expectations, don't feel bad if you don't love the hybrid form, right? Because Oda, using the silhouette, built those expectations and Personally, I don't think it lived up to it. Overall, a good chapter though, a good chapter. A lot of things happened. There are things we can deep dive into, but we're going to wait for the official translations. But guys, how do you feel about all this? I think things are progressing in a good way. At some point, we can talk about character deaths and fake outs and things like that, because I think personally that brought down the chapter a bit for me, because I think it's become a bit repetitive. But there's a part of me that knows this is One Piece. And so normally if I don't see a body, presumably I'm going to assume that the person isn't dead. And that's what I did with Kanjuro and with Orochi. So with, Ashura Doji is a bit different, but I don't expect him to die. Like with Hyogoro, I didn't expect him to die. He didn't die. The list goes on, but we'll talk about that at some point. But for right now, good chapter, MVP, no break next week. But guys, give me your thoughts. How do you feel about it? I really care about you guys' opinions as well. Make sure to like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BragoD8. Follow me on Instagram at BragoD.8. Thank you so much to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Guys, like, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
I start doubting me, I felt lost. I rewrite it.